Hey y'all, this is Darren Van Dam, and welcome back to another episode of Flick Connection, where in less time than you normally spend scrolling for something to watch, I'm going to tell you about all the best stuff Prime Video is adding in May 2024. And it's a long list this month, including a ton of great action movies. Yes, a lot of stuff you're familiar with, but then later in the month, they're adding a handful of brand new release movies that were just recently in theaters, and one that comes out in theaters later in May. But on May 1st, they've already added some really slick movies like Run Lola Run, an action movie from the 90s I don't think I've ever seen available on a streaming service like this. This one's incredibly fast-paced and feels very much like a 90s movie. In fact, it has kind of a Trainspotting vibe at times. And it's a story you've seen before. The main character has to come up with an insane amount of money in a very short amount of time. But Run Lola Run just oozes style, and like I said, it's insanely fast-paced. It is German. You're gonna have to read subtitles for this one, and sometimes you're gonna have to read them pretty damn fast, but you do spend most of the movie running around with Lola, and like I said, a lot of fun. This is one of my top recommendations for the month. Panic Room. Not quite an action movie, more of a thriller, but still action-packed for a thriller. It's also not my favorite David Fincher movie, but he doesn't do a lot of movies like this one, and Panic Room is a slick flick. Not only is the camera work kind of unusual in Panic Room, it all manages to work, and yeah, you've got Jodie Foster and one of Kristen Stewart's first roles, but the bad guys in this movie are on another level. Jared Leto is fantastic, Forrest Whitaker, and then you've got Dwight Yoakam kind of lurking in the shadows for most of the movie. I love a lot of elements to this flick. It's been years since I've seen it, but it still holds up as one of the best home invasion movies maybe ever made. The One is a silly Jet Li movie, but also a pretty cool one. He plays multiple characters in this, traversing multiple different realities. You've actually got a young Jason Statham in this from back when he still had hair. And this one deals with some heavy, like, interdimensional themes, but it also has a lot of fun with itself. Jet Li fights himself in this movie. And even though it's got some zany elements, it still is a pretty solid Jet Li martial arts flick. But if you prefer your Jason Statham to be buff and bald, then I highly recommend Death Race. This movie delivers exactly what you would expect and not much else, but if you want to see some cars crashing, some explosions, and Jason Statham beating the crap out of people, then Death Race has all of that stuff in spades.
Can't kill me. You can burn me, you can shoot me, but you can't kill me!
It's compact, it's safe, it's comfortable, everything you want in a new liver. The price, $756,000.
For some sci-fi movies, one of my top recommendations is Repo Men. This also stars Forrest Whitaker and Jude Law. It takes place in a future where artificial organs are readily available, but very expensive. And when you cannot pay your bills, the Repo Men come to reclaim that expensive property. This one can be a little gruesome at times. It's not pervasive through the whole movie, but it's got some wild moments, a surprisingly good soundtrack, and some great action sequences, but the story here is pretty exceptional as well. Gattaca also just got added, one of the best science fiction movies of its kind. In fact, this movie's much more relevant today than it was back in the 90s when it was released. So it holds up because of that, but also just because of the way it was shot. It's a stunning movie, and the look that they captured with it does not look dated really at all today. Clock Stoppers is a fun one for the tweens. Not quite a time travel movie, deals a little more with like temporal manipulation, kind of like Tenet for teenagers. Fun stuff, not a strong recommendation for me, but if you've got kids the right age, this could be a good watch this month. And they also added AI, Artificial Intelligence, another sci-fi movie that holds up insanely well. It's big, it's epic, it's a modern day Pinocchio directed by Steven Spielberg and co-created by Stanley Kubrick before he died. It can be heartbreaking at times, but it's just always visually stunning. For some comedy, they're adding some weird stuff. One of my top recommendations for the month is Brigsby Bear. This stars and was written by Kyle Mooney from SNL. He actually plays a man who was raised inside of a bomb shelter, and when he gets out into the world, he has trouble connecting with people, but also connects with them in really interesting ways, and decides to make a movie about Brigsby Bear, the only character he was able to watch on videotapes while he was raised in this bunker. It's got some quirky yet touching elements and is very funny, but it's also really strange. So I need to say, this is one for people who generally love discovering strange and unusual movies, but this one's also got a lot of heart to it as well, and it's just kind of an interesting watch. It's a difficult one to describe, but if you ever saw the movie Dave Made a Maze, this is not similar story-wise at all, but it does somehow have kind of a similar flavor. They've also added Bottle Rocket, Wes Anderson's very first movie. He actually made this movie with Owen and Luke Wilson.
Driver, what's our ETA?
7:30.
Good, we're on schedule.
Practice job, heist, and the idea that you and I both respond to goals. Yeah, that's right, you're on that top secret mission. I'm sorry, I forgot I wasn't supposed to say anything.
Their claim to fame, in fact, is working with Wes Anderson. In fact, they made a short film that was black and white titled Bottle Rocket in college and then went on to make this feature film. And it's really impressive how well-honed Wes Anderson's skills were as a filmmaker at such a young age. The comedy's on point, the look and the style of it isn't quite as elaborate as Wes Anderson would get, but it's still there. And the movie's genuinely funny. The two of those guys, they're not brothers in the movie, but they kind of are like brothers, and it all works really well. They try to pull off heists together, and it's just classic Wes Anderson at a time before Wes Anderson was really Wes Anderson.
There they are. Don't you see them? What do you mean? Evil! Pure and simple from the 8th dimension! Grab him!
Buckaroo Banzai just got added, a weird one for sure, but also a classic people just absolutely love. Yeah, I know the title's longer, but I only got so much space here.
Pants and burgers. Yeah, lots of space in this mall.
The Blues Brothers is one I can watch and rewatch. It never gets old. Not only is the music all great, but the comedy is just kind of unparalleled.
Surely you can't be serious.
Except for when it comes to Airplane, another movie they just added that I just can never get tired of watching. I've loved this movie since I was a kid and still do.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
By the way, if you like this shirt, you can pick it up at darrenvandam.com/shop. There's 4 new designs over there. We got this Thor one, we've got an Alien one, a Jaws design, and one based on They Live, which is my personal favorite out of the bunch. They also come in tank tops, and there's a bunch of old designs there as well. The shirts are stupidly soft, but they are kind of a fitted style, so if you like your shirts to fit a little loose, definitely go a size up. If you like them fitted and snug, stick with the size you've got. Or just go to darrenvandam.com to sign up for my free newsletter. It's a fast read and always contains 5 recommendations of movies and shows I didn't necessarily discuss here on YouTube. But Prime has also added a bunch of top-notch classics, including a big stack of Alfred Hitchcock flicks, and it's his greatest hits. You've got The Birds, which is highly rewatchable, but fair warning, the first half of it is slower than you probably remember. Psycho, easily one of his greatest and still holds up really well today. It's just kind of a masterpiece of filmmaking. But Rear Window might actually be my favorite movie of his. I love all the elements to this one. People have tried to replicate this over the years with some success, but nothing really comes close to the original Rear Window. Vertigo is a lot of people's favorite movie of his. I find it to be slower than some of the others, even though it is the most visually impressive movie he's ever done. But then they've also added Rope, a movie that's not nearly as popular as those others, but I love this one. It was actually filmed as if it was one long continuous take. You can kind of tell where they pieced it together, but that method is used all the time today, yet it works really well for the story in Rope, and it's just a tense thriller that doesn't actually have a whole lot occurring on screen. All the tension is happening with things people are hiding from each other, kind of in plain sight in this movie. It's brilliant stuff. They've also added a handful of great war movies, including 2 of the best Civil War movies ever made. Glory, which features one of Denzel Washington's first and greatest performances. You've also got Matthew Broderick in this movie, who seems a little bit out of place, but he does a great job. This one's epic, it's long, it's just one of the best of its kind. And then Cold Mountain, another one that's long and epic, but also has a lot more going on to the story than just the story of a handful of soldiers. They've also added The Deer Hunter and Atonement, 2 fantastic war movies that are about a lot more than just war. With these two, I would highly recommend Atonement over The Deer Hunter. I know The Deer Hunter is a classic movie and has some of the most classic scenes in it of all time, but I promise you, if it's been a while since you've seen it, The Deer Hunter is surprisingly slow-paced compared to movies made today. I'm not saying don't watch it, but if you do, strap in for a really long ride. And then, arguably, two of Glenn Close's greatest movies ever. You've got Fatal Attraction, a thriller that still holds up today. It's slick-looking, but the twists and turns are all still surprising if you've never seen this movie. I would put this movie above Basic Instinct. And then The Big Chill is one of the best movies of its kind. Not only do you have a dynamite cast in this movie, but it's about a bunch of old friends that reunite during a funeral, and as dry and as simple as the synopsis sounds, this is actually a fantastic movie with amazing performances, and it actually has a lot to say. I think a lot of people could connect with this movie. Again, if you've never seen it. I don't actually consider this one to be as highly rewatchable as some of the other ones I've mentioned. And then before talking about all the new stuff, there's a few more dramas, including Schindler's List, Serpico with Al Pacino, a really great true cop movie, and Whiplash is coming back to Prime Video. That is not all. There's a massive list I'll show you at the end of the video, but on May 3rd, they're adding a brand new Anne Hathaway movie that's actually going to be a Prime Video original. It's titled The Idea of You, and it is based on a book. In this movie, she plays a 40-year-old single mother who begins to have a romantic relationship with a 24-year-old lead singer of a boy band. Now, to me, the synopsis sounds a lot like a 40-year-old single mother's fantasy, which there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't know that it's going to be for me.
I do not want to be this invested in a show called The GOAT.
Now everybody head back into Goat Manor. Make alliances, talk trash, figure out which bathroom's going to be used for poop.
I have diarrhea.
On the 8th, Daniel Tosh's new reality game show releases. It's titled The GOAT, and the twist with this one is all of the contestants are people who were contestants on other reality shows. Sounds like something Daniel Tosh specifically could have a lot of fun with. Honestly, I don't really care what kind of games or things they're doing. I mostly just care to watch him rip some of these people apart, or at least have fun with them. I used to love his show. I've kind of previewed his podcast a little bit. He's really one of the sharpest comics working today, and so this show should be pretty funny, even for people who don't like reality game shows. Maybe specifically for people who don't like reality game shows. On the 14th, they're adding one of my favorite movies from 2023, American Fiction. I've talked about it on recent videos because I've covered new releases recently, but the basic setup here is hilarious. In this movie, Jeffrey Wright plays a writer who's having trouble getting his books published, so he decides to write a story that plays real heavy on the race card in order to kind of mess with the publishers, and to his surprise, it actually gets picked up and is loved by a ton of people. But as funny as that core concept is, and as some of the scenes it creates are, there's a lot more to this movie. There's actually a lot of heart to it and a lot of family dynamic stuff that I did not expect to see with this movie, but that I thoroughly enjoyed. I thought the cast was great, and Jeffrey Wright, I've loved him in stuff over the years, including Westworld, but I've never seen him have a leading role like this in a comedy, and I thought he absolutely killed it. Another black actor who absolutely killed it in a leading role is John David Washington in Black Klansman. Now, this is directed by Spike Lee. There's some messy parts. I particularly did not love, not the very ending, but kind of the final act. I felt like it kind of unraveled, but the core elements I love. John David Washington plays a cop who goes undercover as a Klansman. Now, obviously, he does this over the phone, but Topher Grace, of all people, plays David Duke. Adam Driver plays another undercover cop. He actually plays the white guy that pretends to be a Klansman. Paul Walter Hauser plays a really great, dumb racist in this movie. It did lose me more than one time, but that said, I still do recommend it as kind of a wild ride. In my opinion, it easily could have been quite a bit better.
God bless white America.
May 16th, they're adding Creed. I know it's a movie a lot of people have seen, but as far as all the Creed sequels go, I do think the first one is still the best. but they're also adding a prequel with Pearl. This is actually the prequel to X, which is currently included with Netflix. I've talked about it. Mia Goth plays the same character in both movies, and they're both kind of wild, interesting horror flicks. And later this year, she's got another one coming out from the same director that has an 80s theme that should be pretty cool as well. Also on the 16th, Outer Range comes back for season 2. Now, if you have not seen Outer Range, Josh Brolin plays a rancher, kind of like Yellowstone, except this has a science fiction angle. There's actually a big hole in the ground with some mysterious properties, meaning it's a mystery show. It's got more in common with the Twilight Zone than it does Yellowstone, aside from the setting. Season 1 ended on a big cliffhanger, so if you've been waiting for season 2, you don't have to wait much longer, but you do have enough time to catch up on season 1 before the 16th. On the 17th, they add 99. This will be a 3-part docu-series on the 1999 season of Manchester United. Apparently it was a huge year. I wasn't following it then, but apparently that's a huge year, and they've got a bunch of the players, including David Beckham, so fans should definitely get a kick out of this one. And then on the 23rd, they're adding Blue Angels. This is actually coming out in IMAX, I believe, this week, and it will be available on Prime Video in late May. I remember loving the Blue Angels when I grew up, and even as an adult man, it is so wild to watch them fly inches away from each other in formation. So I will definitely be putting this on for my kids later in May. On the 28th, they add The Boys in the Boat. This movie was just recently in theaters. It's directed by George Clooney, which I love about half of the movies that he directs. But this is set in the 1930s and is based on the University of Washington's rowing team, who went from suffering during the Great Depression to actually competing in the Olympics in 1936 in Berlin. Should be a pretty epic story. I've not yet seen this film, but again, rave reviews. I love half of the stuff Clooney directs, and so far it looks like this is going to be one that I actually enjoy. On May 30th, they're adding Die Hard 2, the sequel to Die Hard, which is not quite a movie. It is currently available on Prime as well. It's a Prime original. It's probably not going anywhere else. And it's basically a 90-minute sketch. Kevin Hart goes to an action movie training school run by John Travolta, who is honestly terrible in this movie or sketch, but it's funny, you know, for a Kevin Hart sketch. It wears thin quicker than its 90-minute runtime, and I can't imagine the sequel being miles better, but if you're a big fan of Kevin Hart and you want to watch a 90-minute sketch, these two movies definitely serve as that. But here's the full list of all the stuff that they just added. It's a long list of stuff on Prime Video this month, and their user interface is so terrible that you kind of need to know what's available in order to search for it, because they're not going to serve it up to you otherwise. But that is the list. I'll keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this Prime Video episode, and you will see me on the next one.